Once your bones hit maximum length, osteoblasts they don't just stop their job like going on strike. They continue to lay down bone throughout your lifetime. Your skeleton today is not the skeleton you were born with. Throughout your lifetime, osteoclasts have broken down your bone using a process called osteolysis, or officially called resorption. But at the same time, osteoblasts are continuing to replace or recycle that bone in a process called deposition. Is this ossification? No, not really, because we are not replacing a cartilage model and we're not creating bone for the first time. So no, this is not technically ossification. This is just deposition and resorption. You can see from the statistics here about the rate at which your bone tissue turns over. So you could roughly say that if you're 50 years old, you've had about 5 skeletons in your lifetime. Deposition, it's only part of the process of what is referred to as bone remodeling. Osteoclasts break down the bone so it can be turned over or replaced with new bone. The osteoclasts, they use lysosomes lysosomes. Oh, that relates back to chapter 3. And these lysosomes, what they do is they lyse the bone or break down the bone. I once had a student ask me why it was resorption and not absorption, which is kind of a good question. And I had to think about it for a moment. So absorption occurs in your small intestine, and this word officially refers to the process of taking in things from the external environment for the first time. Therefore, the collagen and calcium released from bone by osteoclasts would enter the blood for the second time, and that makes it resorption. Just on a personal note, I think the word should be reabsorption, but that's not what we have here. If you gain or lose weight, if you start playing tennis, if you start any kind of weightlifting regimen, your osteoblasts and osteoclasts will adjust the formation of your bone to meet the demands of the muscle actions. For example, this bone right here is going to be remodeled to have this projection because this person started playing tennis and their lower arm now has enormous muscles on it. If you break a bone, which I talk about in another mini lecture, you will remodel that bone over and over again until it gets back to its normal shape. This can take months and sometimes 3 to 5 years, as indicated in the pace at which your skeleton replaces its spongy bone. Many of us are familiar with the word osteoporosis, and we have a vague definition of it being a bone disease for older women. But osteoporosis, it results from too little osteoblast activity. So the balance of remodeling gets out of whack. Remodeling is a calculated replacement of bone. Osteoporosis is just too much osteolysis and not enough deposition. Estrogen is a very big influence on the ability to deposit calcium in remodeling. Testosterone, to a lesser extent, does the same thing for XY individuals. But without that estrogen, osteoblasts kind of lay back and do like 50% of their job, right? They work half a day and they're like, I'm done. The osteoclasts, on the other hand, they're not overworking, but they're just working as usual, right? But the osteoblasts are no longer matching their pace. So if you have osteoporosis, just take calcium, right? No. Without the estrogen to encourage the work ethic of the osteoblasts, that excess calcium consumed, it's not going to make a difference. The osteoblasts are refusing to use that calcium. So what can you do? Well, you need to get your calcium, not you, but people, need to get calcium in before those sex hormones drop, as in menopause or a drop of testosterone. which I think sometimes is called the male menopause. I mean, can we not use the word menopause to apply to everybody? Anyway, but your body refuses to take up calcium without vitamin D. And vitamin D, as a doctor said to me many years ago, is like an usher for calcium. Vitamin D opens the door for calcium to enter. But you can take all the vitamin D you want. And if you don't get sunlight exposure onto your skin, the vitamin D won't get activated once it gets absorbed from your small intestine. So let's recap. Calcium, vitamin D, sunlight. Get all three, or don't throw your money away on the calcium and vitamin D if you're not going to do the sunlight. Before COVID, there was this group of old ladies in my town that had like an exercise group that was called Bone Builders. And I don't know if they still do their meetings, but the idea is that since you have lost the estrogen to encourage your osteoblasts to work, you could encourage them through influencing the remodeling needs. So by doing exercises that increase muscle strength at key areas of weakness, like the hips and the shoulders, these applied forces of exercise would encourage the osteoblasts to do the bone deposition that estrogen has taken away from them. So this is the same as when you gain weight or when you start an exercise regime like tennis and start to build muscle that then requires larger bone mass to support the muscle contraction.